Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and join the conversation at thehippocratic-collective.com. Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to remind you that Creating Space, my coaching course and retreat, is open for registration and enrollment now. I am so excited that folks are signing up for spending 6 months with me online and then 4 days with me in person at a spa retreat later on this year. And I want you to be in there. So head to joanchanmd.com/space and book a call with me. You get to chat with me by phone, learn if this program is right for you. So head to joanchanmd.com/space. I can't wait to talk to you and invite you into Creating Space. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I am thrilled to be meeting and having this conversation with this particular healthcare human. When she came into my inbox and made the pitch, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this. Like I was just saying before we started recording, I have been waiting to have a conversation about the topic that you want to talk about, this like medical misinformation piece. But also I've been really wanting to talk to a naturopath because I talk about inhuman stories all the time on this podcast. I've had other conversations with folks in healthcare who are not physicians and who feel sometimes quite an internalized sense of maybe imposter syndrome, or like feel the impact of the ways in which our culture can be quite, we could say, divisive, competitive, something. And certainly a lot of narratives sort of culturally exist about physicians versus naturopaths or whatever. And so I'm all about being like, hey, we're all humans here. And so I'm so excited to speak to you, human to human, and learn so much from you and like have a great conversation. But before we dive into the conversation, Kim, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Kim Bretz. I'm a naturopath. I've been practicing for over 20 years right now. So it's something that I've seen this huge change in just the realm of complementary alternative medicine over that time period. But I've been really fortunate that I actually started consulting really early on in my profession. I've worked on the regulatory side of things, but I also teach at the University of Waterloo. I teach at the pharmacy school in complementary alternative medicine. How do we work interprofessionally? What's the good, the bad, the really ugly? And recently we've really brought in the topic in the last few years that our focus is also on misinformation and how do we tackle misinformation. And so I get to practice part of the time and I get to consult and teach the rest of the time. So I've had a really kind of fun, diverse career that I really enjoy.
That's awesome. I'd love to know a bit about your background, like what drew you to naturopathic medicine to begin with, and what was like the process of like training and becoming a naturopath like for you?
Yeah, so I actually started at the University of Waterloo. I was taking chemistry and physics. I cried for 2 years. It was really awful.
That doesn't sound pleasant
And
to me either.
finally, long story short, ended up at the University of Guelph, which is wonderful. And I was taking biology at that point and really loving it. I knew at that point I wanted to be in healthcare, and I actually knew that I wasn't going to be a medical doctor. It wasn't what I was looking for, but it felt like every other week I was calling home. I was like, I'm going to be a dietitian, I'm going to be a physiotherapist. And I had never heard of naturopathic medicine, and they had a post-grad fair going on at the university center one day, and my friend had stopped to get information from one school, and she was taking a really long time, so I was kind of bored waiting for her. And I saw the banner for the naturopathic medicine school, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to look at, and you don't want to make eye contact with the human that's at the booth, so you kind of steal away the little brochure. I was reading it and looking at the principles and philosophies and sort of looking more at preventative health, looking at some of the conditions that are more lifestyle based, looking at some of those natural things, but still being able to diagnose disease and look at it from the people are going to take medications and kind of that in between thing for me really worked. There are definitely some things within my profession that aren't as evidence-based that I don't work with personally, but what I do get to work with, I actually love. So that's what got me interested. And so you do need to have an undergraduate degree, and then it's a 4-year post-grad program that you do, and then get to go out into the world and do all things natural at that point.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like you'd even just mentioned that there's some things within your profession that you are drawn to and practice, and there's some things that you're not. And I will say, like, as a family physician trained in like allopathic, I like to say allopathic and
Mm-hmm.
naturopathic. I kind of
Yeah.
like how those terms are both just somewhat descriptive, but and slightly less like tinged with whatever else you could
Yes.
say.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if that works for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I will say that there's things within allopathic medicine that I also choose not to practice because I find them either to be not evidence-based according to my training or just not in line with my values or something. So like
Hmm.
same also, you get trained and you see actually that certainly in allopathic medicine that there actually is quite a variety of ways one could consider practicing medicine. For simple disease, there could be multiple options of how you approach it. There could be multiple guidelines for a certain condition, and I'll just say like that's all within
Yeah.
allopathic medicine for sure. I'm curious what that was like for you going through training and recognizing that as well in the naturopathic world there were probably like maybe internal debates or like there was different ways that people
There
were going
is.
about practicing, and what was that like for you to discover and process for
It's
yourself?
challenging. It's still challenging, quite honestly, at this point, because
Yeah.
I will be called by some individuals a green allopath. That's a word that is used because
What does that
I'm
mean?
not. It means that I will look at diet, look at herbs and things like that, but I often will still look at things through the lens of here's diabetes, and we're looking at metformin and
Mm-hmm.
like a medication, or I mean, I look at gut health a lot. So I'm convincing people to take their biologic medication while we're still talking about the diet or monitoring their nutrients or things along those lines, or
Yeah.
why their vaccine schedule is important or things like that. That I'm not necessarily just a everyone is going to solve all their problems by eating in a certain way. So we kind of have this divide on the green allopaths, which I think is supposed to be an insult, and I'm not necessarily sure that I take
Yeah.
it that way personally.
What are you if
Um,
you're not a green allopath? Like a different
um,
color? Or
you're more of the I'm going to work with the energetics, the
okay.
you shouldn't be taking meds, you shouldn't be getting vaccinated. And
Oh,
maybe it's not that extreme
right.
necessarily. I think again that there's a really a continuum on this, but
Totally.
there are some people who will be on the very far side of things
Yeah.
of medications are horrible and we should
Yeah.
avoid them at all costs. And then there's the side where we're like, yeah, they're life saving for a lot of people. And whether that means quality of life saving or actual life saving. And that doesn't mean that diet and lifestyle and potentially using an herb and monitoring your
Yeah.
nutrients and these other things don't matter. We get to be both, I think, in a lot of cases. And we're trained in pharmacology. In Ontario, we have minor prescribing rates, which are frankly fairly useless.
Mm.
But it's something that again we can diagnose disease. So it's something that there's kind of this we're in this weird middle ground of what we can and can't do, and
Yeah.
it's confusing for us. So I think it's probably confusing for the rest of the world as well.
I mean, I do find it deeply relatable. Like, I mean, I like in some ways, like the allopathic physician role has a lot more dominance, even like in pop culture or in like, in terms of people having ideas of what you come to a doctor and this is what it's supposed to be like. And sometimes that can be helpful, but not if it mismatches what you actually plan to offer to
A
them.
hundred
And so
percent,
I
yeah.
could see, especially because I'm like, have I ever seen like, say, a TV show about a naturopath? I don't know if I have, right? Not so
Probably not, yeah.
common. And it sounds like same as like allopathic, like the identity of naturopathic medicine is actually not a singular identity, but actually quite
Correct.
diverse.
Yeah.
You're managing
And
those
it's
expectations, right?
so much easier because I have been practicing for such a long time and I'm
Mm.
so referral based at this point.
Yeah.
Generally, people know what they're getting if they're coming to see me because of that. But I know at the beginning, people would be coming in and there's this expectation. I'm like, I think we have to end this appointment because I'm not going to be able to provide what you're looking for. And I don't think we're going to find a middle ground on actually you being comfortable with this appointment at
Wow.
all. So it's a lot easier right now, but it is something that it can be confusing.
How did you navigate that? I know, like, so you're young, you're just out of school, starry-eyed and hoping to help the world, and you're actually having appointments with clients where it's like, I think we need to break up, basically. Like, this
Yes.
isn't gonna work out. Was that hard?
Yeah. So I really, at the beginning, at the very beginning, I didn't do it. I think I
Yeah.
tried to really try to make everyone happy, and that didn't really work a lot of the time. And then as I got more experience and more confidence in what I was doing, it was just, here is what I do. Are
Yeah.
you okay with that? Because if you're not, then this is not going to be a great relationship here. And some people were like, yeah, actually, let's talk about that because I think sometimes people come into naturopaths because they're desperate, but they don't necessarily want us to be saying every medication is bad either. A lot of
Yes.
people want both, but are afraid to talk to their physicians about the natural side and they're afraid to talk to their naturopaths about the medication side and to find. So for some people, they're like, oh, that's actually great. That's what I want. And then there's other people who are like, and no, you are absolutely the wrong person for me. And I took it more personally at the beginning.
Yeah.
Again, now it's less of an issue, but yeah, it was awkward. And already with my, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, with imposter syndrome, like that was there to begin with.
Yeah.
And now it's the, am I a good enough naturopath? Because I look at these other things. It's this weird middle
Yeah.
ground of you feel like you're not enough on either side in some cases.
And I name that for me and my perception of that is because like we just have this inherent urge or desire or common phenomena that if there's going to be a group of people, there's this desire to define who's in and who's out.
Yes, yes.
And then if you instead are like, gosh, do I have to be in and then therefore out of that? But I'm actually a kind of a bridge person and I can actually
Hmm.
see merits in both things. I mean, I just am relating very strongly, feeling
Yeah.
that way in many domains of my life. And like often then you're like, well, I guess I am kind of, I'm not, I technically am not good enough for your opinion or your
Yeah.
opinion, but that doesn't mean I'm not good enough as a human. That's the bit that helps to
Well,
discover along the way.
it's funny because I have a bulletin board with my, like, all the things that are going on in my life and sort of where I'm going within things. And in the middle of
Cool.
it, I've drawn a picture of a bridge and I've stuck me in the center of it and sort of allopathic and naturopathic or CAM, whatever we want to
Yeah,
call it. And that's the picture that I have in the center of my bulletin board.
I love it.
Just as a reminder that that's actually a great place to be. It's
Yeah.
just, it's not very common right now.
Yeah. And especially say like on social media or in like where in the hot topic, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
debate and verses and
Yes.
I just need to vent and rant about why can't all these naturopaths or why can't all these
Hmm.
doctors or whatever and then
Yeah.
not that generative of a
Yeah.
space to live.
Yeah. But that's what sells right now. And that's, I
Yes.
think, one of these big problems that we're looking is that people are sad and scared and afraid. And healthcare is one of those areas where it is scary and overwhelming, and people don't have a lot of great resources. And the world of selling, whether even in traditional media now, when we're thinking about TV or news media websites or things like that. I don't know if people read the newspaper anymore in a paper copy, but
Yeah.
however people are consuming sort of that traditional news versus social media, although social media is more polarized and more fear and anger based, we're still seeing it happening in traditional media as well. That's what sells a lot of the time. And that's what people are consuming. And so when that's where people are getting their information, it's way more effective to get people to listen, to be angry and say, let's get rid of all the people in complementary alternative medicine.
Yeah.
Although, again, I think of that kind of like abortion, whether that's appropriate to talk about, but we can
Yeah.
say we're going to ban abortion, but that doesn't mean abortion stop.
Totally.
You can decide that you want to ban all people who do natural health care and not regulate them and not have anything there, but I don't think it means that it's going to stop. And
Nope.
so these angry conversations, they bring the people who already believe that belief, it doesn't tend to change people's minds. And I think that's where just a basic problem comes in beyond the misinformation side of things. But it's so difficult right now of the so what do we do with all the anger and all the misinformation and all the fear, and how do we start to deal with it?
Yeah. That's a perfect segue because I know that originally, and like a part of your current work now is really addressing misinformation
Hmm.
and that being very, very prominent on social media. But even, I mean, just like in magazines and in like whatever, Gwyneth Paltrow,
Well,
etc. Like
it's
there's
in
like all these different
politics, like it's
oh my gosh, politics, like it like people running countries and
uh-huh.
not sticking to facts. Like it really, well, there's alternative facts. And it can be honestly like, I mean, sometimes I just have to look away. And sometimes you can get quite kind of nihilistic of like, wow, we cannot, like, I think we're going to start debating what color the sky is at some point. Like, it feels like we're being
I know.
pulled so far apart from each other's realities that and it's very painful. Like,
Yeah.
I'll just sit name and like in my own family, there are different people, all in the medical profession, who are consuming different news sources, myself included, like,
Hmm.
and have come to different conclusions about, say, like what was the right thing to do in COVID. Like it
Hmm.
real and it causes real relational damage in that setting. Never mind also like between clinicians and their patients. Like it causes so much relational damage.
It does. And we actually, there's a survey, an annual survey that the Canadian Medical Association does on health and media looking at misinformation. And they actually have stats on that, that it is causing personal relationship problems
Yeah.
within health misinformation and I'm going to say with the politics of what's happening as well. But it's so interesting to be teaching in this topic right now because I put it in because as a naturopath, I get to spend more time with patients than the average, I was going to say family doctor, any doctor does. We just
Yeah.
have more time because we're a fee for service. Like you get to pay and do what you want, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So our system is set up that we're talking more. So I get to hear more of what people are doing, what they're thinking, and getting these conversations around some of the things that people are choosing to do because of what they heard, and then have more of these misinformation conversations. So I wanted to bring it into the course at the pharmacy school. And so we started the course, or we started changing the course, and it was more just about, okay, some people are hearing this information and they're choosing to say, I'm going to do a carnivore diet instead of taking my biologic for inflammatory bowel disease because it will stop inflammation. And obviously, I do not agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's something that I was hearing those things. And so starting to do projects with the students where they can do blogs and do videos where what do interactions actually look like? How do we try to pre-bunk or inoculate people against this information? How do we have better conversations? How do we approach this? But it was funny because I have the assistant dean do of the school do a small lecture in my course. And so she had been in for half the course or for half the class. And then I talked on misinformation for the second half. And so a year or two ago, she sat in on that class and she had given me some feedback saying, like, that was really great. And I'm really impressed with the fact that you didn't bring politics into this at all. And I was
Mm.
like, yep, because I don't see that as being helpful for the students at all. This year, she keeps sending me articles that are coming through because of what's happening in the US right now about vaccines, about the measles outbreak, about all these things, and the little note on it saying this would be interesting to discuss in your class. And it's all and I'm like, how things have changed
Oh, yeah.
within 1 to 2 years, and just watching the concepts that we talk about, because we'll talk about things like vitamin A and how we extrapolate information. So we can see that the vitamin A studies on populations that have low levels of vitamin A, we can see that giving vitamin A helps with the immune system.
Mm.
We don't see that that helps in populations that are already vitamin A replete, like the
There you
vast
go.
majority of Canadians and individuals who live in the US. Yet now we're hearing that you got the measles, vitamin A, and then that's being translated into social media that vitamin A is going to be preventative for the measles, and not talking about toxicity levels, liver damage, the fetus issue. Like there's so many pieces that they take a nugget of information and turn it into something else. So we had been talking about that idea of vitamin A being translated into something that it wasn't. And then all of a sudden we have it being talked about in politics that it's actually part of the how do you deal with the measles along with cod liver oil, clarithromycin, and budesonide. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do here right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really
Yeah.
challenging.
So how, for yourself personally, as well as like, I'm imagining the students will ask you, it's like, how do you handle it? Just like on a human level, what's your approach to like, yeah, what's your like personal process of, I guess, coping with and addressing and still seeing not only just awake to, but actually teaching on this topic? Like, how do you deal with that, honestly?
So, first of all, I have a great group of friends and colleagues that I get to talk to about
Okay.
this. That is one of the things that is my saving grace within all of this. And it's
Yeah.
funny because I have colleagues and friends who are naturopaths that I work with, and we're all kind of in this area. And so it's nice to be able to talk about these things and how crazy it feels and kind of vent about it, and
Yeah.
also talk a little bit about strategies or what we're doing in our offices to manage this or what resources we have or things like that. It's interesting because I also have a group of friends, and it's always joked about because it's me and the seven anesthesiologists that we have this one group.
Cool. You are a bridge person. Look at you
I
go.
am a bridge person. They'll ask me things about like
Mm.
what's going on, and so I get to see sort of the other side of like the what the heck, and then kind of being able to explain what how sort of people who are not in healthcare are viewing things and how they're interpreting things, and that actually helps my brain to be able to empathize from the public side of they're trying really hard. They are really trying hard within a world that we don't have enough family doctors and we don't have enough time. And so they're getting information wherever they can.
Yeah.
And it's really stressful for them. And so that trying to be empathetic side of things, and
Yeah.
again, trying to be that bridge within what's happening there does help. But it's something that, as I said, I follow people who have crazy like misinformation websites that I don't think they believe are misinformation, but I do. And then I follow people who are the pro science, let's break down the conspiracy weirdness side of things. And there's just times where I have to shut it all down.
Yep.
Where right now, because I'm in a teaching semester, I follow a lot, and then I'm going to have to unfollow a lot to make my brain okay. My algorithm on
Oh
social
no.
media is crazy. It's
You need a whole
very
separate account,
distressing. I
actually.
know. I know. And I need to do certain things I do in incognito mode so
Yes.
that it's not affecting some things, but other things I'm like, oh, I just messed things up a whole lot.
Now I'm only getting ads for supplements or something.
Exactly. Yes. And that's true. And then I'm like, well, these are making me crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So those are some of the things that I work with to make that a little bit more palatable in my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That like the stabilizing force of like friends and like the validation of just like I'm not seeing this totally off base, right? Like others like actually viewing it the same way as you. Like That's such
Yeah.
a helpful piece to know you're not alone in how you're feeling.
Well, and I'm
Yeah.
so fortunate that because I am, one of my things that we do work with the pharmacy school, but I've done for quite a long time, is that benefit of intercollaboration.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of pharmacists. I have the educators at the pharmacy school who will reach out to me and send me stuff and sorry, confirm what's going on a little bit more. But I also work within, because I'm mainly virtual, but when I work in practice, I work out of an MD's office actually,
Mm.
and we're associated with a pharmacy and medical clinic, and I work with dietitians. So I get different perspectives on things, as well as the fact that I work in natural medicine and speak to a lot of people who work in natural medicine as well. So I'm getting lots of different areas that are actually reinforcing what I believe, which
Yeah.
is helpful to my brain. And
Yeah.
then when they're not, I have to dig in a little bit more. But yeah.
You had mentioned before how, like, especially when you're teaching, so you're following very potent social media presence that are saying, super dose your vitamin A or whatever, things that you and
Yes.
I would say, uh-oh. Not
Yes.
only or do we not see evidence that that actually will help the thing you're saying it'll help, but actually there could be potential harm if people follow that advice. And then
Uh-huh.
you're also following, and I certainly I know I have a few for sure that I follow that are debunking and sort of medical information and trying to combat that medical information misinformation on that side as well. And I'm really curious if this would be if you'd have a better a bit of a sense of what evidence we have of what is effective to help really shift someone's mind who's been following, column A,
Yeah.
and if it is column B that really shifts column A's mind. Because one factor that I notice is like, it depends, of course, on the content and it depends on the
Hmm.
person. But there can be a style of talking about debunking medical information, misinformation, which can be like, hey, this is what this person said, and this is what I think is more accurate. Here's the studies that seem to back it up, and kind of maybe more in that tone. And the ones that seem to be most popular that I notice my
Uh-huh.
nervous system says, oh, I'm going to remember them more. It's like that quack, that woo
Yes.
woo, like really kind
Yep.
of also doing, is it ad hominem, whatever, like what kind of sort of doing more of the aggressive, attacky kind of style and really
Uh-huh.
like taking them down and destroying them. I definitely know which one the algorithm favors.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
curious if there's data or if you're aware of like which of those is actually more effective at addressing the medical misinformation problem.
So we see that the more angry, get rid of all the quacks.
Yes.
Why can a naturopath do this, period? Like all of that side
Yeah.
of things, it reinforces for the people who already believe the message. It
Yeah.
helps them. It does not help bring over people who are in the column A of I'm believing in the medical misinformation right now.
Yeah.
It makes them feel small. It makes them feel stupid. It's something that it actually drives people more into a rabbit hole from what we can
Yeah.
see. It does not bring people back to shame people at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that when we're looking at how do we actually approach this, that's not what the research, it's not what the experts are saying at all is going to be helpful for that group. It's going to make you feel superior if it's what you already believe.
And that certainly resonates. So I'm always open to the evidence, like debunking if the way I'm feeling isn't what's really seen. But that
Yeah.
in this case really matches even what I feel personally as someone who like, you know, has the cred of being an MD, etc.
Yeah.
Sometimes actually like even either I get that yeah, support superiority feeling, but more and more I'm like, oh no, now I'm like, so if I associate with a naturopath, will that person think that I'm not a real doctor? Like it actually can
Uh-huh.
make it feel like less comfortable or less open to having more bridge like views or like because that's like because you're supposed to be on a side, it feels very like territorial in a way that's like
Uh-huh.
primal, and that I would prefer not to have living in my nervous system, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
that's it's like a secondary effect, right? Like that, like also even for those within your own community who maybe are like, well, could we like discuss this or like talk about complexity? It shuts down that conversation as well. Like even within like MD allopathic community is my that's not evidence based. That's just like my opinion and my perspective. And so just
Uh-huh.
another. I'm then curious what the experts or the data. Speaking of evidence based,
Yeah,
like what
exactly.
what do we have as our best tools or and theories and approaches so far of what can be that bridge to help people understand that though they have really understandable human reasons for maybe wanting to follow this person who seems so confident and who seems like they really have all the answers, like that perhaps they could consider maybe even just also listening to the alternative view that their physician's giving them, for
Hmm.
example.
Yeah, so I think for all of us as healthcare providers, we actually have to rethink the entire model of healthcare communication, which is a horrible thing for me to be saying in my out loud voice because I know, and I'm thinking to Canada and Ontario specific, but when I think about family doctors and I think that my message is we have to change what we're doing to people who are already
Yeah.
overburdened and just trying to help people that are desperately in need of help. And I'm saying, and we need to do this differently now. That's horrifying. And I'm going to say my message isn't necessarily about every individual doctor doing this all on their own,
Mm.
but it's something that healthcare communication has always been a top down approach. We've got our institutions, we've got our guidelines, these monolith sort of the government tells us what we're supposed to do and then we translate that to patients and then they're just supposed to do it. That has been the model
Yeah.
forever and that model doesn't work anymore. It's something that we absolutely see that institutions move very, very slowly. They're often very confusing, they're very dense. And the way that media is happening now is very engaging. It's trying to, even though I don't think they're often doing it well, it's trying to make science very easy and accessible. And it's
Yeah.
storytelling and it's these narratives that wasn't how any of us were trained. And
Yeah.
so when we're trying to still use that model and a model within institutions that a lot of people don't even trust anymore,
That's it.
that's not something that really resonates with people. So we need to be able to start to communicate differently, and that's going to have timely, empathetic, easy to understand, short soundbite sort of pieces of information. And that is something that in some cases may be one to one with someone that needs it in the office, but that could be having resources for what are safe places for people to look for information. That could be people, medical centers in a community putting together news bites or putting together information. That can be having some of the staff in an office who are saying, like, people are asking more about this. Maybe we should have something written up about it's vaccine time again. Sort of,
Yeah.
can we debunk or pre-bunk that information ahead of time? And it also involves asking questions of our patients as well. It's interesting because most people don't share with their doctors that they do any CAM, so complementary alternative medicine therapies at all. We know that 57% of people don't, based on the Fraser Institute report. Do you know why?
My guess is that they are afraid that their doctor will be mad at them or judge them in some way.
So that's the thing that everyone thinks. And
Yeah.
I don't really know. According to the report, that's not it.
Oh,
According to the report, I know. This is why I ask the question. I ask my students all the time as well, because they give the same answer. I gave the same answer.
yeah.
And I do think for naturopaths, that probably is the answer. But the actual Fraser Report Institute was because doctors didn't ask. They
I see.
didn't ask the question.
Right. Yeah.
And it's something that if you don't ask the question, they're not going to say it. So then how do we even have a conversation that
Yeah.
some things could be going wrong? Why aren't you doing the therapy? Not in a judgmental way, but if you've chosen not to take the medication, what are you doing instead?
Yeah.
Like, can we start to talk about this? Because if it is this biologic example and I'm doing the carnivore diet, can we talk about the risk that's associated with that? And not just the risk of eating all animal products, which is insane to me, but
Mhm.
that missed window of opportunity that you could have a fistula or fissure or
Yeah.
end up losing part of your colon. These conversations are things that if we don't ask the questions, if we don't have these open-ended, where did you get that information from? Can I help you find something different?
Mhm.
Conversations. And
Yeah.
again, maybe that's other people in your office. Maybe that's a conversation with a nurse, maybe a dietitian.
Yeah.
Again, maybe if we're seeing more of these things coming up, that we have resources that we can send people to. but these sorts of things can be really important. So those are some of the things that we think about. It's also the idea of we have to earn trust. And
Yes.
it's funny because historically we trusted medical healthcare providers easily. That was the whole thing. And
Mhm.
now that's not necessarily there for everyone at
Yep.
this point in time. It's easy to trust the girl on a farm who's giving information that seed oils are bad while she's milking a cow, and you feel connected to her. You feel that immediate, okay, like look at her. This is so
Yeah.
idyllic. And what if I could be like that? But I just am not going to live on a farm and I'm probably not going to have a cow. But it would be amazing if I could have those things. And
Mm.
this is so amazing. And when we're getting this messaging, which again is so simplistic and doesn't come to anything, but natural is good and unnatural is bad. Those are things that people are buying into. And so when we have to build trust with people, that takes time for that to happen. But it does include being open to past mistakes, or like I look at the fact with irritable bowel syndrome.
Mm.
It wasn't talked about within the American College of Gastroenterology that food played a part in anything until 2014. Like that's less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And patients are saying, yeah, food is causing me an issue. It doesn't mean that taking away foods is necessarily the answer that we're sort of finding out right now, but people are like, but these things do matter.
Yeah.
And so it's something that for me, being able to say, you know what, I did think this. And now with the research pooled together, I've actually had to look at things differently. And yeah, let's talk about this. Or yeah, I saw this and it might not be the best option for you. Can we talk about what sort of a middle zone is on things and start to build that rapport, which again, I understand is so difficult when the time constraints are so big within what you're doing. But even those little bits of conversation of not saying, why the F are you thinking about doing that? Or if
Yeah.
you don't do this, I can't work with you. I
Yep.
don't know what I'm supposed to do. Or having the, when the new patient comes in and they sign the document that says, I'm not going to be mean to your staff and I won't dole out opioids inappropriately. We have one from a local doctor who says, I will not talk about naturopathic, chiropractic, homeopathic, or something else medicine.
Mm.
If you choose to dabble in these areas, I can't help you, sort of thing. Like he's
Wow.
not going against what the CPSO says. Like
Yeah.
he's saying you can dabble in it if you want to,
Yeah.
but I can't help you if you're doing these things.
Mm.
And that is something that doesn't build trust. It doesn't build conversations or bridges. It
Yeah.
just, and people need a doctor, so they're going to sign the thing. They're just not going to say what's happening.
Yeah.
So this
Mm.
is something that having these places where we can at least try to build the trust to talk about these things is going
Yeah.
to be very, very important as well.
Yeah. One
Um,
thing I'll say, I know you've been so lovely to acknowledge how, like, I mean, probably literally every profession is feeling overwhelmed and overburdened in the healthcare sphere and primary care. I think I'm imagining every branch of allopathic medicine, certainly because
mm,
there's not enough of us. Basically,
right. There's not.
the supply demand is off the charts, not in our
Yeah,
favor.
right.
And so acknowledging that, saying, and this might feel like a big change and it feels like it'll take time, but and I mean it's like I've just already bought the Kool-Aid because like this is just what I say all the time anyway. But even like honestly, from my own personal experience, shifting my approach to patients to being more moving at the speed of trust, non-hierarchical, meeting people where they're at, centering what they are actually interested in, and being open to those conversations and sort of centering and focusing on the trust building. And in the
Hmm.
process, like really letting go of the need to be the expert in the room, the need to have the authority in the room. I will just personally say that that has been extremely liberating for me and
Hmm.
actually has saved me a bunch of stress. And I find to be actually more time efficient because then I don't
Yeah.
have to be doing my lecture that then their eyes glaze over and then they still go do whatever anyway. And then I feel like I have to do the lecture again next time and I'm beating my head against a wall. You know what
Well,
I
and
mean?
we know that the lecturing style does not work. We
No,
know that 100%. And it makes
totally.
me laugh because I always joke about this, which hopefully my husband isn't listening to this, but he's in IT. And whenever I
Mhm.
ask him a question about something with a computer, he explains it to me in a way that makes zero sense. And he feels like lecturing at me more is going to be
Yes,
helpful. And so
I
if I say
relate.
that I don't understand, he's just going to get more technical and explain
Hmm.
more like
Yeah.
I'm a robot. And I do not understand. So
Yeah.
now I don't ask him questions. And it's funny because I have a friend of mine who also had questions. I'm like, I'm going to talk to Sean about this. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because we're going to kill each other in this conversation. Like that is the reality of that. But we
Yes.
know that that lecturing style is something that it does not work. That patriarchal view
Yeah.
of medicine that is so hard to shake ourselves from
Hmm.
is something that is actually driving people away. And it's
Yeah.
making people feel like they need to go and get other information. And when we look at the stats, we see that I think it was 37% of Canadians went to online information because they couldn't access a doctor. So that's
Yeah.
a huge problem in of
Yeah.
itself.
System problem. Yeah.
But the reality of the people who are accessing information, there's so many things that people are getting wrong. We know that the vast majority of Canadians are highly or moderately susceptible to health misinformation, flat out.
Mm-hmm.
But we also see then that 43% of Canadians within that model have increased distress and anxiety because of that. We
Yeah.
see that it's delaying conversations with doctors. So it's all of these things that if we don't get better at this, these numbers are just getting worse. And
Yeah.
so I think you're right that if we're choosing to not change our strategies, if we're not looking at people as humans who are just trying to feel better and get information that will help them in a timely manner, we're actually going to bring more stress into not just the system, but our day to day lives of practicing medicine as you
Yeah.
are. Like
Yeah.
it just makes it worse.
You hear it a lot, and I mean, you can kind of said in different ways, but people being like, ah, I hate Dr. Google, or like patients don't respect us anymore, or I mean, there's like different ways it can come through,
Mm-hmm.
and all of it like are valid feelings. And naming, like it's one of those cases where it's not our fault, but it the part that is ours to play gets to be our opportunity, or if you want to say
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, we can responsibility as in, yes, we didn't personally certainly start any of this, but we can examine the role we play and choose how we want to respond, and in a way that hopefully at least feels better to us, and often
Mm-hmm.
then also better to our patients, because often when you're actually connecting
Yep.
human to human, everyone feels better. And it's
Mm-hmm.
great to know that actually the data shows that that actually is more effective at addressing the problem as well. Like if we continue to offer and build up trust with our patients, then ideally that'll make them less susceptible to trusting others over us, or not at least having a conversation or considering different points of view. I just think
Mm-hmm.
that's really, it's lovely when the data of what is effective lines up with what actually, in my view, actually feels better to me. Then I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to personally set a boundary of like, don't talk to me about if you see a chiropractor, I can't help you. Instead, I can say, tell me about that. I'm very, like, for me, I'm like, this is what I know and this is what I don't know. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people come to me, they ask about natural supplements or herbs, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I do not have training in that. And like, so,
Yes.
and I'm happy to say
Yeah.
what I don't know, and then I can say what I do, and then we can
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation about that as well, you know?
Well, and it's interesting because I'm comfortable to talk about herbs and I'm
Yeah.
comfortable to say that a lot of them don't have the research that we need,
Yeah.
but some of them do, and I can have that conversation. But
Yeah.
within traditional Chinese medicine, I actually don't understand the system of herbal medicine within that. And it's something that
Mm.
even as a naturopath, I'm saying, like if someone's taking something, I'm like, I can't actually answer that question because of the
Yeah.
way their system is set up is so different than what I understand
Oh, cool.
that I don't know how this is necessarily going to interact. And then we have to make decisions based on that information of
Yes.
what do we do in that scenario. So I think even within this, like I'm very comfortable to say I don't know that, or
Yeah.
we have to navigate what this is going to look like in a world that people are still going to be doing these things, and pretending that it's not happening isn't great within this. So, yeah, it's a challenging area to navigate. But I also think, and I always think about this because with being on our regulatory college, I sat on the complaints committee, which was horrifying.
Oh no.
Just from the perspective of even like where misunderstandings come in,
Yep.
because a lot of the time it wasn't that people were going out of their way to do horrible things, but
Yep.
just how can we make things better? How do we look at things? And it's funny because even with starting, because I think I started with the college in 2015, and seeing the change in social media, in sort of things that colleges, regulatory colleges, don't have a lot of good rules on how do things work
Mhm.
because they were set up before we had social media.
Yes.
We don't have frameworks to even understand in a regulatory sense, how does this work? What can you say? What information is out there? How do we interact with patients?
Yeah.
Yet people with no regulations get to go out and say and do seemingly whatever the heck they want to do.
Yes.
And then we're in this sort of giant experiment of what does
Yes.
medicine look like when every rule has basically changed. Institutions don't make sense. We don't get to just lecture at patients and then they just say, okay, I'm going to do what you
Yep.
said. Now they get to go and look at research papers if they want to. They probably don't understand them very well.
Yeah.
And a lot of individuals who are out there talking about them don't understand sample size or bias or a lot of the things that we should know about, or what's the difference between doing a diet study versus handing a person a piece of paper that says, I would like you to do this, kind of
Mhm.
expecting people to do it the way that if we handed them a statin medication and they're just going to take a pill every day. They don't understand that translation. But people can access that. People can access clips of information that don't necessarily meet what's happening for them, but feels really compelling. We're not trained in that.
Yeah.
This is all new territory. So when we're frustrated, we don't have a system that understands where medicine is coming from in the first place. And now we're in this really weird area of conflict of trying to help people and sometimes feeling like people are actively trying to hurt themselves when they're not, but we're just at a complete disconnect. And I think trying to understand where people are coming from
Yeah.
and what is happening in the world and what they can access versus what healthcare professionals can access are they're just so different. But if we try to understand that a little bit better, I think it can help our brains
Yep.
feel a little bit more comfortable and be a little bit more empathetic to patients and who again really just in a very very scary world right now just want to feel a little bit better.
That's it. Like conversations that I've had with patients where they're making a choice about their health that seems to be based on misinformation. And that when I, have conversations to try and understand and connect with why, and if there's are sort of in a place where there's room for decision changing or not, and kind of like doing that sort of motivational interviewing stuff,
Hmm.
the thing that is the common themes, almost everyone is terrified. They're
Hmm.
terrified of something that they've heard or read often repeated times of like, I hear what you're saying, but the aluminum in the vaccine, or I hear what you're
Yes.
saying, but the world's about to end because of this reason. And they're deeply in like in a fear-based place, which is like, they didn't put themselves there. That was like
No.
based on the content that they consumed and other people saying like you need to be terrified of that. And I would say the secondary one is anger.
Hmm.
That would be more maybe if it's more like say in the political realm or something, or like when folks come and they don't want to take advice and it's like they're angry at the establishment. They don't trust the
Hmm.
establishment. And that's all also because either they have seen themselves personally or have been given examples of people who have been hurt by the establishment and like how deeply human, what deeply human reasons to hold on to things and not be interested in being convinced otherwise because like your body is in a protection mode. I'm not interested in, I think that you're the lion trying to eat me. Why would I trust you?
Hmm.
So it's like just having that, that's really helped me to then connect of like, okay, this, because sometimes we can take it personally and then that doesn't help. Or like,
Hmm.
you're making
Yeah.
it harder to do my job, or how dare you not trust me, or how dare you disrespect me. And it's like, actually, what's happening is that they're terrified. They can't even see that I'm here in the room with them. Really, like they're
Yes.
just
Yeah.
trying to protect themselves or someone that they
Yeah.
love, right?
And it is hard. Like if it takes you 3 weeks to get in to see someone
Yeah.
who's a family doctor in some scenarios, and it's taking you a year to get in to find out if you have inflammatory bowel disease, these and I mean in emergencies it's generally not. That's one of the things that I do appreciate about Canada is that
Mhm.
we're generally still good at getting the emergencies taken care of. But
Yeah.
it's a hard thing when again, it feels like the system is failing you.
Yeah.
And then you look to get help somewhere else.
Yep.
And then you're being told by some individuals that you're stupid or the eye rolling or the well, you just do whatever you want sort of approach to
Yeah.
things. And that, again, it increases the fear and anger. And then again, as you were talking about before, when we see the messaging from some of the pro science, anti conspiracy theory people where they're like, yeah, why are they so effing stupid for
Mm.
like thinking this thing? Of course, you're like, you're defensive and you feel shame and
Yeah.
discomfort and you just say, well, why would I even talk to you about this?
Yeah.
So I do think that there's a lot of things that we can do, but it is something that even educating new doctors, new pharmacists, new naturopaths, like how do we actually do this? How do we work together to find common messaging
Yeah.
around basic principles and how do we teach students and young individuals how to look for misinformation? When I look at things within someone who's claiming that they're going to be able to prevent you from getting the measles when you're unvaccinated, and they have a program and they're selling a whole bunch of stuff,
Yes.
that's a question mark in my
That's a little
mind
flag.
around exactly. We don't have the research, and you have the most amazing program, and you've got
Mhm.
like these testimonials and all the things that are just salesy,
Mhm.
and yet they're also saying, and the pharmaceutical companies are the devil, by the way, because they're selling stuff for profit.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you weren't selling things just out of the goodness of your
For
heart.
non-profit. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just it's these things, but we're looking and again we do that natural, safe, ethical,
Yes.
compassionate, kind, pharmaceutical or unnatural, bad, out for
Evil.
profit,
Yeah.
evil. And again, it's that divide on things. And when we can find the middle zone on things, it can be so helpful for people. So I love that idea of just being open with people about where they are, what they're looking at, not shaming, and feeling more comfortable with that than just trying to kind of browbeat people into the just take the pill, just take the pill, just take the pill.
Yeah.
I find that I spend a lot of time convincing people to take the pill
Mm.
of whatever it is because I can have the conversations
Mhm.
that can help them do that. And we can also say, but you get to do this other stuff too.
Yes.
And that, again, that middle zone can be so lovely within things.
Well, as a fellow middle zoner, it's been just a real delight and privilege to get to speak to you, Kim. I'm so glad that we've had this conversation. Okay, I have a couple questions. So one is, where can folks find you? Do you have like a public internet presence that you'd love to direct people
Do.
to? Okay.
Yeah, so I do have a website, and Instagram is mainly where
Yes.
people will find me as those two areas. I
Hmm.
do all the time. I'm like, I should do something more, but that's where I am at this point.
It's good enough. Yeah.
So usually my webpage is drkimbretznd.com. And the same thing for Instagram is Dr. Kim Bretz ND.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that's usually if I'm trying to answer some of the questions that I'm hearing a lot of the time from people or sharing my latest ballet class or things along those lines.
Ooh,
Yeah, it did
fun.
not go well. I did one and I walked away.
Oh no. Well, good for you for trying.
Exactly. I tried. But yeah, so those are the sorts of things or places where people will find me.
Awesome. And my last question that I always ask is, thinking of the folks that are listening to this podcast, who are folks who work in healthcare. I know for a fact that multiple NDs listen because they've reached out and
We
been like, "We
do.
love it,"
Yes.
and so hello, love you guys.
Yes.
And allopathic and all sorts, like certainly not just doctors of all kinds,
Hmm.
but like folks across healthcare, they are feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling like they're struggling. They're feeling frustrated about the misinformation and everything that's coming through their door. What words of advice or wisdom or encouragement would you want to offer to them?
I actually think we're at a point in time where we can be making such a huge difference. This is an area where it's really untapped in being able to counter what's going on in the world in a kind, compassionate, easy to understand way that doesn't have to deal with hate. Because basically, that side of things is a void right now. It just,
Wow.
even the stuff around debunking misinformation, even if we're coming at it from an angry point, there's not that much of it.
Yeah.
But that void within, I think it's something that this is a really great time to be looking at this. It's a great opportunity to change how things are happening right now, especially I think once we know where some of the problems are.
Yeah.
People who work in healthcare, as much as I know so many people are overwhelmed and exhausted, they're also the people who will step up because nobody gets into this because they don't want to make a change. So I think this is exciting. The students that I get to work with, undergrad and my pharmacy students, like there's just so many people who are embracing this notion of making things better. I think it's a really exciting time right now.
Oh, cool. That's just a message of hope of like, where's
Hmm.
the opportunity here, right?
Hmm.
Well, I'm excited to follow you and it's always good to curate that algorithm and curate that timeline and really like, as soon as I start to get that like feeling, I'm like, oh, like, unfollow
Yes.
and take my eyeballs off of it because that teaches the algorithm that I don't want that
Hmm.
information. Like, and so I'm happy to have sources like yourself to help stabilize and be the sane middle ground. So
Oh,
thank you for
thanks
the
so
work you
much.
do. That's awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for having me on. It's been really fun talking today.
Yay. All right. Well, for all of those who are listening, thank you so much for listening as always. And we'll talk to you next week. I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.